El Salam, Queen Phoenix Ramadan L. Jackson, back in the light of Al Brazeera Cyber Network. Tonight's Taurus New Moon Light video conversation is regarding reparations to restore the spiritual, mental, emotional, and social economic health to the integrity of the African American population. From its inception, the Administrative Board of America has spent more of its collective wealth on killing, impoverishing, starving humanity and its natural environment than it has in any attempt to preserve or restore life. A great deal of this destruction is acted upon the African American population that dwell in the U.S. The African American people have historically been violently and social economically repressed by the Administrative Corporate Board. Now, African American people have repeatedly received harms even after the enslavement, which is why the ratification of the bill that has been initiated in Congress for restoration of the social economic integrity must be accepted for value in order to prevent a lawsuit to be filed with the Supreme Court, as was done to declare the end of segregation. Now, or the matter be taken before the World Court or the United Nations. The request for a request for a global boycott or embargo, freezing of American assets, or worse, civil war. The economic interests, which could lead to, the economic disparity between the cultures, okay, could lead to civil war if the social economic debt owed to African Americans remain outstanding. Due to the social economic injustice and being oppressively disenfranchised from actively participating in the global economy, African Americans were the very essence of, in every respect, of being denied their human rights and threatened with death. Okay, funding for social economic integrity funding for social economic restoration will initiate the spiritual, mental, emotional health healing that traumatically devastated the African American communities. And it was done intentionally. It was inflicted upon the African American populations born in the Republic, as was done all around the world to African people, right? Now, so social economic reciprocity will have an immeasurable impact to remedy the current harms caused by past traumatic slave syndrome or post-traumatic slave syndrome that continues to affect the spiritual, mental, and emotional and physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and social economic health of many among the African American peoples, which stand at critical mass. Social economic reparations would serve to alleviate a great deal of suffering and torment experienced by African Americans which is an ongoing basis, every day and every second of the day and night. The positive execution of social economic remedy will have a reach that will extend far beyond the boundaries of the present generations of African Americans, and will serve as a bridge to support the posterity of all African Americans and all Americans in general, and as well as the entire world. Reparations would be in the form of a form of economic relief, by which will be used to construct commercial industry, um, or commercial industry and the commercial infrastructure of those communities that are now considered to be ghettos. Um, Now, that in the infrastructure, by building the infrastructure of the African American communities, it will support the African American people. And African American communities will be able to build hospitals, educational systems, banking institutions, transportation systems, communication networks, greater employment opportunities, investment houses. African American communities under it will be able to construct, their commercial infrastructure, and in the underserved community that are currently underserved. Um, Now, and it will so it will economically they will be able to socially they will be able to economically develop these communities equivalent to the first world communities. Okay, all first world community, because currently in America it's like in the urban areas are basically like third world, are underdeveloped and underserved like many third world community nations. Okay, so no longer they will no longer be disenfranchised from the global economy. African Americans will be able to utilize their own self-determination. They will inherit, okay? They could address their own interests and create greater and represent themselves in foreign markets such as Africa, and have a high yield, um, as returns on their investments. Um, and they will be able to invest in, as I said, still developing countries, third world nations, while while also aiding these underdeveloped nations by their investments. And those third world nations will no longer, especially like in Africa, be they will no longer have to depend on foreign aid or charity, because having a charity lifestyle, trying to construct a life on charity, depend on charity, is no way to run a country, or no way for a country to to progress. So African Americans will be able to aid in this doing so, and much of this return will come back to America to serve all of Americans. Um, so no longer would African Americans have to give so much, Americans in general, from from government, no longer would have to give foreign aid, to Africa, and it will cut down on this wealth could be redistributed in America. Um, so okay, or um, yeah, so they would be able to save this money in the budget, right? Okay, and then that would help the deficit, right? The debt. I know it's a start. Or they wouldn't have to invest in so much military, right? Because they wouldn't be so fearful of retribution, because of the harms, the danger that poverty creates, for competing for a limited amount of goods. Okay, they wouldn't have to worry about the violence. Okay, because hoarding wealth, and usurping wealth by, taking the other nation's natural resources, and leaving that country in destitute. That is what causes war, okay? And paying dictators to oppress the nations into poverty. That is what creates civil war, and that is why there is no peace in Africa, because of continuous usurping of natural resources, and having to support the dictators to keep the people oppressed, and then giving them and supporting the dictators in the form of foreign aid, and then the people are poor, and so then we have rock stars giving seeking aid for the impoverished Africans, when their nation is very, very wealthy, and they don't have to, have this handout. All they need is a hand up, and that is by stop usurping their natural resources and invest in the country, and to build up the infrastructure so that they also can become a first world nation. Okay, that is what, and earn their dignity and maintain their respect and their integrity of the nation. So it will help and cut back in the military budget, right? Military spending, which is money that is much needed at home, right? And as I said, it can be spent at home, and it can start the reconstruction of America too, America's economy. So once the social economic relief is made in the form of reparations, Africans and Americans, Africans in Africa and Americans as a whole shall benefit by expanding the economy. Employment opportunities will also expand in the market. Now, so, and that, the increased wealth in the economy, in the market, will also make universal health care more feasible, free education more feasible, higher wages more feasible. So not only for African Americans, but all Americans. Expansion in the market would not only create diversity in the market, it would free the racial tension in the cultural classes by creating greater employment opportunities. It would remove competition for the limited amount of positions, employment opportunities in this single Rothschild market that is catering to, as I said, the single Zionist agenda of a Greater Israel project. And what the Greater Israel project is about: globalization, right? And one man controlling the market, centralized in Jerusalem, right? Which they want to be under the helm of Rothschild the Beast, right? So that would create greater diversity in the market, and the wealth would come home to America, okay? When the money is invested in Africa and other places in the world, right? So it wouldn't be a single market. Now, it would be a market that is working for everyone, okay? Because that market, that single market, is shrinking every day with the outsourcing of jobs. So, and that's what I said, with the outsourcing of jobs, the market is shrinking. That one market cabal, the banking cartel that's monopolizing the market, right? And by owning, basically controlling everything in the market. So if we have diversity in the economy will expand, the market will expand, creating greater opportunities for everyone. So reparations is good for everyone, and not only it will remove America from the stigmatism of slavery, okay? The stigmatism, the karma of slavery, because that is coming back, okay? And the voice is only going to get louder and louder and louder, and America needs to restore its own place in the global economy. It needs to you know, it needs to, when the dollar collapses, it needs to have some way of supporting itself, right? Um, so, and that their market is shrinking, and they want to take it elsewhere. But we can have the market. We can expand our market here, okay? And as I said, when the dollar does collapse, we have to sue the Vatican for deceiving America into war, right? Having America borrow all that money for a war that Americans didn't vote for, okay, and other things, right? We I wrote about that, okay. We'll do a video about that, okay, because America has to survive. We have to survive. This is my home too, okay. So the market is shrinking, okay, and the jobs are being outsourced. And it will place an end to the cultural to America being a culturally polarized nation, or having culturally polarized communities, which is many times it is due to social economic is due to social economics, right? So the social economic class system. Okay, so okay, which is based upon it, and sometimes it's based upon employment locations. People want to be located closer to the job, but there's no jobs in the ghettos, right? Um, so creating commercial infrastructure in, you know, the disenfranchised communities, and greater opportunities to be employed in those communities, you know, will diversify those communities, okay? Because you may not like always the people you work for, but, you know, once you work in a diversified environment, ideas begin to change, mindsets begin to change, okay? Um, Perceptions begin to change, stereotypes begin to be removed, okay? Because now we're working together and we're understanding one another, okay? We have a greater exposure. Okay, so reparations will aid in truly integrating America and the world. It will expedite the much needed end to the ugly stain of racism left by Zionist cultural supremacy and the violence stemming therefrom. Crime in all of America will decrease substantially as employment opportunities, okay, as employment opportunities begin to grow, right? As employment opportunities begin to increase. And the prison industrial complex will be no longer, because African Americans will have empowerment, okay? And they will be able to police their own neighborhoods, okay? Their own communities. No longer will there be need for, you know, because African Americans will no longer be disenfranchised, socially, economically disenfranchised. African Americans will have aided in the expansion of the market, right? Okay. Okay. And they will have employment with livable wages, okay? Because it doesn't make sense to have a minimum wage, you know, like $10, and then housing be like $2,000 for an apartment, right? A two bedroom apartment, $2,000, but the person's only making $10 an hour. Doesn't make sense, right? So the market has to be expanded, okay? Let people have, all of humanity has to have a living wage. Okay. And there will be the great need for education. No longer will there be education be frowned upon as being a waste of time, boring. It will be mandated because the market will be very, very competitive in regards to the type of employment that's available, right? Okay. So the demand for education will be due to the, well, as I said, will be in demand because of competition in the global market. The need for what, speaking multiple languages, okay, will increase because now the person, the African Americans will be, you know, their wealth will be invested in multiple countries, right? And so now that means that we would have to learn to speak, diversify, our language, well, our ability to speak multiple languages, right? So it would elevate, well, it would change the structure of the communities, right? Totally. The demands in the community, the demands on the people, on the populations. Now, so it would have a positive effect on all of America. All of America would be greatly benefit to a great advantage, as I said. Reparations in the form of social economic relief would decrease the threat abroad from those who are also, as I said, also disenfranchised from participating in the global economy due to commercial imperialism and the monopoly Zionist cultural supremacy holds on what is falsely perceived as a free market. Because African Americans would invest in developing, going again, because African Americans would invest in foreign markets and end the dependency on 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 charity, okay, and social services, okay. And in Africa, it would depend, and by investing in Africa, it would end the usurping of of Africans' natural resources by having by Africans, governments would no longer have to depend on to borrow money from the International Monetary Fund, and whereby doing so, they become victims to economic hitmen who, knowing they going to these governments, these African governments, and asking them to take out these loans from the IMF, knowing that these African nations would not be able to pay this money back. So then, when they don't pay the money back, it's like, okay, then we're going to come and put a lien on your natural resources. We're going to nationalize, not nationalize, we're going to privatize your natural resources. And now your natural resources are owned by foreign corporations, right? Foreign investors. So now they don't have resources to their own land or their own resources, right? That's what economic hitmen do. Okay, they're like loan sharks, right? Um, on a global scale, right? And then the people are very, very impoverished, and that's when you see those famine and flies around children's mouth and vultures waiting for the children to die so that they can eat they can do what they do. They can do what vultures do because the economic hitmen are vultures too, right? Um, so they can end that predatory banking practice. Okay. And and Africans will no longer depend on charity they will not no longer need to depend on a charity based economy as forespoken of. Now, and now they can depend on and rely on the development of developing their natural resources, as well as the plethora of uncultivated African human intellectual potential. And that will be the same thing here, that African communities in America, the African population within America, will be able to depend on their intellectual, uncultivated resources, as well and that will lift America, aid America in lifting itself out of debt and economic strife that is soon coming, definitely going to come. Okay, and we already talked about that, and we'll probably talk about that at the end of this program. Um, so investments will prove to benefit not only the African American nations of the world, but as forestated, America as well, because great portions of the investments in the form of trillions of dollars will return home to continuously be recycled, not only among the disenfranchised African American populations, who, but it will aid aid the in supporting the global economy. Okay, um, African Americans have been socially, economically abandoned, leaving Americans to inherit younger Americans to inherit the infectious wounds still festering, still painful, still just as ugly um, as the Palestinians, as the problem that is reflected back to America in what's going on in Palestine. So if you look back at Zionist Israel and you look back what's happened in Palestine, you can look back and see America's history. And you will be, if you look at today, then you will, what's going on in America with the collapse of the dollar, the potential civil war, all of, as a result, civil war as a result of the dollar collapsing, not just out and out civil war. No, because if things stayed the inflation and all this, and the dollar didn't collapse, then there probably wouldn't be a civil war. But because the dollar is going to collapse, that's when the designers figure, okay, they collapse the dollar, then they make that the civil war is going to ensue because people are going to be fighting over limited goods, right? So if you look at the Zionist Israel right now, and you see what's going on with the occupation of Palestine, what they're doing to the Palestinian people, and the building the wall, and the segregation, and the denying them civil liberties, and all these type of stuff, and human rights, and the murders, and the massacre, and the genocide, and all that kind of stuff right there, that's America's past. That's where we came. That's where America came out of. But the feeling, the sentiment, this disenfranchisement, that is still simmering. So we can change that. We can change that now. We can change the future. It's just as ugly, it's just as painful as what's going on in Palestine right now. Okay? Which also has to stop with the unification of one Palestine. The occupation has to end. It has to become one Palestine for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, mashallah. Inshallah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it can't go on like that, right? Just like America can't go on like this. So if we solve this problem now, we get together and solve this problem now, and even if the dollar collapses, we still sue the Vatican, the global banking system, get the money back, and institute those funds, um, uh, you know, across the board for all, you know, Americans, okay? Invest for all Americans, but retributions come out of that for African Americans, okay? Because America has to pay that, okay? And all of Americans should support reparations. They must. All Americans must support reparations, okay? So those wounds are still festering, and they're still painful and still ugly, and you can look back at Israel, what's going on in Palestine right now with the occupation, okay, of the Zionists. That was America's very, very near past, okay? And the Zionism is, you know, what's going on in Israel is America is the future of Zionism. So we can stop both of those right now in its tracks, right? Okay. So it's just as ugly. Okay, America's has a psychosocial past. Okay, no, a psychopath. Okay, America's history is that of a psychopath, right? Like a psychosocial path. Okay, African American people have continuously been padlocked out of the global economy, not only by the commercial imperialist, not only by commercial imperialism and the Zionist cultural supremacy, but by the administrative corporate board as well, because the administrative corporate board, which is the White House on Capitol Hill, okay, it regulated all of the injustice. It delegated African peoples to chattel, right? It made it legal to enslave African people. It made the law, the runaway laws, and all of these type of things, right? Okay, so it's the corporate board that administrated it all. It regulated it all. A corporate board that strategically designed COINTEL programs, not only to oppress African American people, but to destroy any opportunity for their second socio-economic advancements. Many of the leaders of the African American communities were murdered by assassination, while others were incarcerated. Till this day, families are destroyed by mass incarcerations, which remain the policy today. A long, and it's along with it goes along with unstated with, which does not need to be stated, but it's police brutality is embedded in that as well. Okay, it is a criminal injustice system. African American communities remain under constant threat of assault, domestic assault. Drugs are specifically designed to target African American communities. Then regulations are placed on the drugs in a drug war, right? To entrap young African Americans for using and possessing the drugs. Then they feel, the prison industrial complex with the young African Americans, okay, that are unjustly entrapped, okay, to fill the ranks of the massive prison industrial complex. So they disseminate African American, and what this does is it decimates African American families all across the nation's republic. The privatization of Americans' massive prison industrial complex is the new slave ships of yesterday. Then there is a poorly underfunded educational system that makes African Americans vulnerable because the educational systems are ill prepared to proficiently provide. And the educational system does not prepare the African American to successfully provide for himself independently of the administrative corporate board, because everything in their life is generally subsidized because they're so poor. But no, it's not because they're so poor, it's because they're disenfranchised from the market. The market practices practices discrimination, disenfranchises them from the market, doesn't want to give them an opportunity to participate, right? Then because of that, what the government subsidizes this disenfranchisement by giving them, social programs that do not give them the opportunity to elevate themselves above poverty, okay? And then in the prison industrial system, the prison industrial system has become the slave ships, and the government has become the overseers of these prisoners, right? With the privatization of prisons, right? And then they work in these prisons for sweatshop wages, less than third world sweatshop wages, okay? Our employees are paid in sweatshops, okay? So they're not prepared proficiently to be successful and go on to institutions like higher institutions, of learning so that they can be prepared for the job market. But even, um, so the corporate board makes it, is the overseer of all of this. Okay? It supports all of this. Okay? They oversee the social economic injustice of the African Americans, okay, and makes them dependent on social services for like welfare, food stamps, government cheese, which all that government cheese they have in underground bunkers, and not bunkers, but underground storage places and caves, right? And that's the type of food that when this dollar collapses, we as Americans collectively need not kill one another, okay? We need to demand our government, which was what that food was stored with tax dollars and all this foreign farm aid that they gave these corporate farms not to grow food or to grow food, and they bought the excess and stored it, right? We demand that be given to the people in the military, and the military should be used at home, not placed overseas to protect Zionism, the Great Zionist Project. No, it needs to be brought home, okay, so that they can administer these foods and protect the communities, because we don't have to kill. There don't have to be no civil war. The military and the National Guard, all of those can be utilized to administer the food that's stored in these underground, in these mountains, right, and these caves, right, and then while the government sues these international banking systems, right, to bring the money back home. So we don't. There is resolve. There is a resolution that we must take. We don't need that Americans draw arms against each other over food, right? They didn't do that during Pharaoh's time in Egypt when the famine occurred, right? When the dollar collapsed, there's a chance of famine. Don't have to go that route. There's food, plenty of food. We just have to be prepared and pass these videos around and pass it to each other and what to do, because everybody can't be a prepper. Everybody don't have land. Everybody don't have money. Everybody don't have time to grow a garden. Everybody don't have time to barter. Everybody don't have things to barter. But we do have money, and we do have food in those caves that they've been storing and they've been hoarding, and we can demand collectively as one, black, white, Mexican, Native Americans, okay, all of us have to unite together, okay, and that is what we all have to unite for reparations too, so that we can all stand together against the global banking system, the globalists who are trying to take our livelihoods. Yeah, they can have war, they can prepare for war and all that stuff, but as long as we the people say there to be no war, and we're not going to go to war, we're not going to serve in no military, we're not going to, unless it's to help ourselves, then we serve in the military. But if they're not going, if it's to go overseas and all this kind of stuff, we don't need to do that. We don't need to participate in war. We don't need to fight Russia. We don't need to fight with Turkey. We don't need to fight with the EU. We don't need to fight with them. We need to stay home and protect ourselves. That is what we need to do. That is what we gotta do. Ooh, salam alaikum. I gotta get another video.